Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Katie Kia here, and I'm going to walk you through Lightroom basics. I use Lightroom for all my photo editing, so today I'm going to walk you through color and lighting. I'm going to be working off my desktop, but these tips and tricks can easily translate over to the Adobe Lightroom app on your phone as well. Let's jump in. Uploaded, I'm going to be using Lightroom Classic. I like Classic a lot better than just Lightroom CC just because there's a lot more you can do with it, I feel personally. But again, these tips and tricks can translate through all of the platforms because we're just walking through lighting and color today. To start off, if you head over to the Basic tab, we have up top what is our white balance. We've got this little droplet here. It's as easy as clicking that and then finding something white in your photo. And then clicking that, we'll use my corner right here, and that automatically tries to guess what it wants the colors in your photos to look like, the correct colors. I don't use this a lot when I'm shooting outside, but if I do shoot indoors, I will use this Lightroom Balance tool. Another way to do it is also to come over to this little drop down tool, and you can choose between flash, fluorescent lighting, all of these different options. So this, since it was taken in the middle of the day in nice and sunny Hawaii, if I click daylight, that already kind of tries to guess again what the colors on my photo would naturally look like. Since it is outside, I'm not going to use this, so I'm just going to do as shop. Moving down with our different tools, we next have temperature and tint. So temperature, you guys, let's have a little come to Katie moment real quick. If you are using someone else's preset, this temperature and tint is most likely your best friend from taking your photos from looking like an Oompa Loompa to looking nice and natural. A lot of times when you buy someone else's presets, they're gonna be a lot warmer than your natural colors and your natural skin tone. So please, all it takes is just dropping down that temperature just a little bit to get more natural colors. But since I am outside, I am gonna warm this photo up just a little bit. So I'll bring that temperature up. We have cools on one side and we have warm on the other side. So that blue and then that yellow. So the further I go towards the yellow, the warmer my photo is gonna look. The closer I get to the blue, the cooler the photo is gonna look. So I'm just gonna warm it up just a little bit. Next we have our tint. So we'll have our green and our magenta on the different ends of the spectrum. This can go a long way as well, and it only takes a little bit to help your photo. So since this is in Hawaii, I want the greens and the blues to really pop in this photo. So I'm gonna drop down the tint just a little bit to kind of help those blues and those greens. Moving down to exposure. Exposure, think of it as a blanket for your entire photo. So from top to bottom, the lighting in this is going to brighten. So your shadows are going to get brighter, your whites are going to get brighter, everything's going to brighten up. So with the exposure, I'm actually going to bring this up quite a bit, probably to about like 50 to start out with. I don't like going higher than 50 usually when I'm shooting, just because I don't want to lose the quality of my photo. We're gonna come back to contrast because I'm gonna show you what I do next with highlights and our white. You might think, hey, I want a really bright, pretty photo. I'm gonna bring those up. Well, that's not always necessarily true. What I do is I actually drop my highlights and my whites almost completely down. So for with this photo, I'm gonna bring my highlights down and I'm also going to bring my whites down. So taking a look at my photo now, as you can see, it's a little bit darker, but the colors are a lot more rich and a lot more rounded. I don't look like I have the sun shining on the top of my head necessarily as much anymore. I do this for all of my photos. I bring down the highlights and I bring down the whites, just again to get a more rounded, clear and clean look. Jumping over to shadows and blacks. I'm gonna bring these guys up just because since I did bring the highlights and whites down, it is a little bit darker. Bring our blacks up as well. Okay, now looking at my photo, it starts to look flat because I'm taking my highlights one direction, my whites, and my blacks and my shadows another direction. So I start to get kind of a faded flat look. I don't like that. That doesn't look great. So now I'm gonna jump up to my contrast to help make the subject of my photo, which is me, stand out from the background. I'm gonna move this up probably, we'll say about 15 to start with. We might come back to this. Okay, moving on down. Clarity, vibrance, and saturation. I don't play with this a lot, but sometimes I do. Depends on the situation. So there are some good things that come with clarity, but for the most part, since my photo right now looks pretty natural, I'm just gonna bring it up to 5 just to look in, kind of like with contrast, help me pop out from the background. Vibrance and saturation. So when they're on their two extremes, they look the same, but when you move them up just a little bit, vibrance is gonna make things pop, saturation is gonna make things look deeper and more colorful. Bring the vibrance up just a tiny bit, probably about 6. That sounds good. Okay, time for color. We have our HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. So when it comes to hue, I want you to think of the rainbow, right? Roy G. Biv, you got going on right there. Red bleeds into orange. Orange bleeds into yellow. Yellow bleeds into green, so on and so forth. So when I'm working with hue, the higher I go up on my reds, it's going to be a deeper true red. But when I bring it down, it's going to get closer to orange. Same thing with orange. When I bring it down, it's going to get closer to yellow. So they'll all start to bleed in with each other. So keep that in mind when you're trying to mess with different color tones, because it might be impacting a different color as well. Red, orange, and yellow are generally the 3 colors you're going to see in skin tone. So if you move over to red, you're going to want to move that down closer to the orange just a little bit, especially if you have red undertones. This can save you a lot. Or if you have breakouts or something like that, just move the red down towards the orange a little bit and that will even things out. There's not a lot of red in this photo, so I'm going to leave it for now. Moving to orange, this is going to be my skin tone, so I'm going to move this down to orange just a little bit because in our photo, there's a lot of yellows and I want to try to separate the oranges from the yellow. So I'm going to move it closer towards the red side, but not too much, just a little bit. We're barely going, like -9 right now. Moving down to the yellows. Yellows, again, the sand is yellow. My skin tone has some yellow in it, so I'm going to adjust this towards the orange side a little bit more because I don't want to look yellow, but also not orange. We're trying to find a happy medium in between. Moving down to our green. So green is also connected to yellow and blue. What we want to do for our greens right here, because there's so much yellow in our background, we're going to move it towards the blues just a little bit. Because when I move over to saturation, I'm actually going to bring the yellows down and I don't want to take away all of the color out of the plants. Aqua and blue, our sky and our water. Aqua is kind of a crazy color to me. If you like really, really fun aqua colored photos, good for you. But I like things to try to stay as natural as possible. So I don't mess with aqua a lot. What I do, however, is I bring my blues up to a deeper blue just to try to keep things, again, as natural as possible. So I'm going to bring the blue up and maybe the aqua just a little bit. Purple and magenta, not seeing a lot of those colors in this photo, so I'm going to leave that as well. Jumping over to saturation. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of yellow in this photo. The sand is yellow and it's also blending in with my hair and my skin tone. So to help make my skin and my hair pop out from the photo and away from the sand, I'm going to drop down the yellows. Whoop. And now it looks a lot more clean and bright just by dropping down the yellow saturation. Moving down to our greens. Like I mentioned, our trees in the background do have some yellow in them, so that's why I brought it up closer to the blue side just a little bit, because we're going to start to take away those yellows. So they look okay right now, but I am going to just brighten them up just a little bit and bring up the saturation so they pop out of the background as well. Aquas and blues. I'm going to drop down the blues just a little bit so our sky isn't too bright and overwhelming. Kind of just messing with these just a tad back and forth to try to find the balance that you like. Again, a little bit goes a long way, you guys, and all it takes is adjusting the color just a little bit to make your photos look even better. Over to orange. My skin tone again is orange, so if I bring this up, watch what my body does. Woo! Oompa loompa. I'm gonna drop it just a little bit, just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, because also I want to look tan. I don't want to look completely pale. Which moves us over to luminance. Luminance is gonna be, think of it kind of bringing out the highlights in your photos and bringing out the shadows in your photos of that specific color. So for anyone who wants to make themselves look a little bit tanner, this is what you gotta do. All you have to do is drop the orange just a tiny bit. And look, you start to look a little bit more tan. Our greens, whoop. Watch what happens with the sky when I move the luminance on the blue. Woo. Just brightens everything up a little bit. Aqua will brighten that up too. I want to look tan in this, I do, but also I kind of like it better when my skin's more glowy and shiny and just natural, because honestly, I didn't get that tan on this trip. Okay, and again, not a lot of reds. There's a little bit of red in my skin tone, so I'm gonna jump back over to the hue, and I'm gonna bring the red now down towards the orange side to try to get rid of that red color. Okay, we're done. That's all we had to do is just fix our lighting and our color. It's pretty simple. Let's look at our before and after so you can see the difference that these simple steps make in your photo. Before, after, before, after. Oh, looks so good. Those before and afters help so much. So again, simple things you can do with our lighting and with our color, and it's just 2 little areas of your photo editing app. So there are so many things you can do in Lightroom, as you can see, and I'm gonna continue to make these videos so you guys can take your photos to the next level. But today, all we covered was some simple basics when it comes to lighting and color, and it took our photos from, again, good to great. So all you have to do is follow those simple tips and tricks. I hope you learned something today, and happy editing. Did you come to help? He's like so concerned. Look at him. Say hi. You're my cute little tiger king.